Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for choosing our session on whether management contracts work for investors. As you know, management contracts can provoke a wide range of views, and we hope over the next hour to explore exactly what this panel thinks on this topic. I am delighted to be talking to such an experienced panel, and I'm going to ask each of my fellow panelists to introduce themselves.
Thank you, Joe. Claudio Capaccioli, Senior Vice President of Development for NH Hotels. NH Hotels is a Spanish-based company, 400 hotels in 29 countries and 60,000 rooms, operated under lease, management, and some of them owned.
I think my microphone's working here. Keith Evans, Starwood Capital, responsible for acquisitions in the hotel sector in Europe. Morning.
My name is Frank Hildwein. I'm running hotel acquisitions for Deca Real Estate in Europe.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Karl Badstuber. I work for AXA. I look after the hotel side, acquisition and asset management. And I've been with AXA about 3 years now.
Hello, I'm Bruno Juin. I'm the Managing Director of BNP Paribas Real Estate Hotel, and we're dealing with transaction, advice, and valuations.
Thank you. And now me. I am Joanne Owen. I'm co-global chair of DLA Piper's hospitality practice. And for those of you who don't know who DLA Piper is, that makes me a lawyer. So in order for us to get a flavour of the room, I'm going to ask for some audience participation. I'm not going the Mexican wave route, but I would like a show of hands, please. So who of you here today are investors, owners? Investors? Operators?
Oh.
Professionals? Okay, thank you.
Good mix.
We will be taking questions at various junctures, so please do participate and feel free to ask away. So, gentlemen, when we were preparing for today's session, we were talking through what exactly an investor is and how broad that topic can be. Without missing you out, Claudio, what type of investor do you see yourself as, Keith?
Starwood Capital is a global private equity firm focused on real estate with a long history in the hotel sector. So I would probably characterize us as a value-driven, kind of risk-on type of investor who looks to transform the businesses or the hotel operations that we acquire. And we work with either management companies that we own or every management company that is out there in the market. So we really look at every investment on an individual basis and try to find the ability to create value in the short to medium term rather than the medium to long term. We tend to be a 5 to 6 year holder rather than a 10-year hold kind of dividend driven type investor. So very value driven, but moving the EBITDA line pretty substantially in a reasonably short period of time.
I work for Deca Real Estate. Deca is the head organization of the German savings banks, and we manage about 30 billion of assets in total, and we've managed now to reach about 10% of that total volume in hotels. So we own about 3 billion and 45 hotels across Europe, and also we had the latest acquisition in the US, in New York. We are a typical core investor, and we have limitations in terms of what kind of structures we can buy. We are regulated under the German investment law, and we need to have fixed income. So we're not able to buy into management risk. So we need some kind of lease structure to give us a fixed income.
Yes, AXA, I think it's fair to say, is one of the leading investors and owners in Europe. with approximately 80 hotels. And we really have all the different categories of hotels from 1 to 5-star. In terms of the overall value, it's nearly 2.5 billion. If we look at, in terms of lease and management, we have about 2/3 based on the value lease, and the rest is obviously management contracts. We have about 16,000 rooms in most of the European countries. Last year, we have acquired our first property in the US, which is the Hilton in northern Los Angeles. We work together, apart from Accor, long-standing and a strong relationship, many other brands. I mentioned Hilton, of course, NH, where we have a management contract in Amsterdam, and also most recently a project in London, but also Intercontinental, like the one in Marseille, and also Radisson, Parkin, and several other brands. Our investment focus can be from core to core plus to value add, and of course, we're not against opportunistic. We have a pool of different funds, from AXA inverted commas family funds to other European funds and Asian and American. So we have a very wide range of opportunities we can look at, and we have worked on and acquired recently.
Yes, please.
On-
For you.
For me. Well, we do not own a hotel, but we do usually work on behalf of clients for operator selection. So we've been working recently on different assets where the owners were asking us, should we be looking on lease or management agreement? So it's the field that we've been able to develop. Unfortunately, I don't have the same portfolio that those gentlemen, and I'll be happy to have it.
So I think we have established that there is a range of investor type, and from my experience, that can drive quite differing approaches to a management contract. We'll come on to other forms of arrangement later, but looking at a management contract, Keith, what do you need? What do you need to work well?
Well, a number of things, but really management contracts have evolved over time. It's a partnership, obviously, between the operating group or the management company and the owner. So it's a bit of a supply and demand in terms of negotiation, and at certain points in the cycle, operators have a stronger negotiating position, and the other parts of the cycle, the investors may have a stronger position, and then you balance that probably a little bit off the actual underlying asset in the demand by the operators for that asset and for their respective brands, etc. So there's a number of dynamics that impact the negotiation and inevitably the actual contract itself. I think from our perspective, we're an investor that is happy to underwrite and evaluate risk, take risk, and also look obviously for the return on that, or the value creation through the whole period. So on the contracts, I think some of the areas where, in terms of concepts, where we feel it's very important is to have really an alignment of interest, to have both the parties incentivized in the right way. And alignment of interest means what are we doing? We're creating value in the real estate, and the management company is helping us create value through the P&L, so the performance and the cash flows generated in the operations. So, but it's that plus the real estate angle, so it's operations and real estate. So we want to make sure that everyone's aligned during the whole period and focused on maximizing our profits when we exit. So alignment does take a number of things. On exit, it is important for us, and it's a transition that we're starting to see across the operators, that on exit, that there is a clean vacant possession exit on when we go to sell the properties. That's because, for obvious reasons, it's obvious why the operators don't like that, because they love a 30-year term on their management contract. It's good for their cash flow, for their stability, and for the valuations of their companies. On the other hand, from a real estate perspective, when you sell your asset, you want to find the highest bidder and in some cases that bidder may have a different business plan than you had. Maybe a strategic buyer has their own brand. There's a number of reasons why they may want to have to shift from one operating or brand to another. So having that flexibility is pretty key from an exit perspective. The incentives is really about sharing the upside and balancing that against the risk. So we're not an investor that necessarily needs to have minimum returns or any type of downside protection. It doesn't hurt, but it's not something we often need to seek for, because we're actually making a bet on that real estate investment or that bet on that company, and we're confident in the business plan and the operating partner that we select. But at the same time, we're going to negotiate fee structures in a way that doesn't allow the operator to sit and collect a large base fee, but allows them to get proportionally higher fee as long as they're generating value in the real estate along the way. And beyond that, some of those components do reflect a characteristic of flexibility, and from the other perspective, I think transparency is key. Transparency is key in terms of having visibility down to the P&L within all the line items, understanding the different fee structures, understanding the utilization of the central service charges and how it's handled, the marketing fee charges, and how that's bundled at headquarters level and then distributed across the network. So transparency is also key for us. So these are some of the areas where we look to flex and create value when we're negotiating those contracts.
Keith, before you move on, going back to the vacant possession point, I think that will interest a number of you in the room. I know from a legal perspective that one of the key questions I get asked when I'm looking at a transaction is the extent to which we can get rid of the operator, for which I apologise for the operators in the room. But it really is a critical point that has such an impact on value potentially. How easy is it for you to get that through?
Well, I mean, the concept is simple, right? The concept is if you're the best operator for that asset and you're delivering either strong growth or stable cash flows once it's, you've achieved its position within the market, then the incumbent manager has the competitive advantage vis-a-vis other operators, because they're the incumbent. If you change operators, by default, there's going to be disruption. They've either proven themselves to be a strong operator of that asset or portfolio or not. But it's through demonstrating that strength that they earn their right or ability to stay in that position and to convince the new investor that is buying and making a significant investment in that real estate to entrust that investment with that operator going forward. So I think it just makes commercial sense from a partnership perspective. Now, I know the other side of the coin, obviously, but that's just my perspective. But if the question was, how easy is it? I mean, nothing's easy in a negotiation, and I think the pendulum changes with some of the dynamics I mentioned before. It depends on the strategic nature of the asset, which, by the way, plays both sides of the coin in that negotiation, because the more strategic, the more they're going to want term. On the other hand, the more they want the asset, so the more flexible they'll be. So it's a bit of a back and forth. But put it this way, the trend is in our direction at the moment in terms of having an understanding and a flexible position on exit. But it also depends if you brought the deal, and whether, because if you're buying it from someone's balance sheet and it's a strategic asset for the long term, and it's a sale and manage back, it's a very different dynamic from a negotiation perspective than you bought a great piece of real estate and you want to bring in a new management company. So there are different dynamics to every negotiation. It's not easy, but I think the trend is in that direction.
I know, Claudio, you probably want to butt in at the moment, but I'm going to ask Carl for your thoughts.
Well, I think he's covered nearly everything, so compliments. So I think that's very good, very impressive. I think, sort of what I could add to that, I believe, we are looking in terms of management contracts, not for the classical management approach, where basically the operator has a percentage of the top line and adjusted UOP fee. We want certain other components which are quite key, which are very much key to us. One of them is in terms of employees. We want that the operator holds, is responsible for the employees. And also we are looking in terms of alignment of interest or risk share, maybe it's another term, that the operator also gives maybe a certain guarantee, NY guarantee. There are always more wishes, and I think all those points Keith already pointed out. But clearly, you know, for us, and we have those contracts established recently and years ago, the employees are with the operator, and we have other guarantee components in place, which one can maybe say it's a bit of a hybrid management contract. Everything else, I would only repeat what Keith covered perfectly.
Bruno.
Yeah, well, on our side, we're a bit schizophrenic because either we work on an operator selection and we're trying to find the right hotel operator for the unit where we've been instructed for. And on the other side, when it comes the time of transaction, the first question we ask is definitely how do we exit of this management agreement, because basically the investors will be very motivated in leverage, trying to find a leverage on the operation, and one a way to do it is to go with another brand and to see what would be what you could be able to negotiate with a new brand that the existing one is not able to provide to you. One of our point of view is that a management agreement, you should find a way to align interests between operator and investors, and it's not always the case. Definitely, the typical length of management agreement in the past decade were something over 20 years, and as the hotel is becoming really mainstream in real estate, you're dealing with investors which only know about lease, and you have to educate them on management agreement. So it's a all new world for them, and it's hard to understand that they have to sign a contract which is offering less advantage of a typical lease, while having a duration much more longer. So one way to align those interests and to have mutual interest between the operator and the owner is, in our view, and you already mentioned it, Carl and Keith, is how to exit. And the termination clause on the management agreement will be definitely the key points we'll be looking at. And for instance, we believe that the right operator for a hotel will be the one which will be ready to quit the premises should the performance of the hotel not working. It's a way for him to bet that he's going to be better than the others, and we've seen that recently in some management agreement where you are a much more competitive environment for hotel operators, and right now those clause could be negotiated. It's a long-term contract, and for the owner, it's a lot of risk. It is the investment risk. It has to be risky for the operator some way. You mentioned guarantee. I personally don't believe in guarantee because in the past we've seen that basically when you start having the guarantee that is implemented, nobody cares until there is no any more guarantee. But a way to be sure that you can exit the hotel operator is for us the best clause you could get in a management agreement.
We quite like the guarantee.
Oh, well, I don't say you have to agree with me all the time.
It may be very bizarre, but we are quite keen, and I think, again, without going into too many details, but you can also have a mechanism in place where the operator tops up the guarantee. So there you are. So that is it. And maybe just another point, of course, for us, because we have very different investors and they have different investment profiles, certain investors can only do lease contracts, and many others do management as well. And sometimes there are certain requirements we need to consider in terms of the investment profile as well.
So, Claudio, how do you achieve this balance? What do you need?
Actually, I guarantee that AXA likes guarantee as much as DECA, or even more. So they are totally aligned. There is a total alignment of interest. So, we talk about alignment of interest, and it's true. It's the management contract has to be. It's kind of you build trust. There are two different parts that are working together. Has to be working together for many years, so that everything has to be clear since the beginning, and there should be trust since the beginning. Obviously, I don't agree with Keith when they want to kick out an operator that is doing his work properly and is actually adding a lot of value to the hotel. And at the same time, I understand that, and it's totally correct what Carl said. In case the operator is not performing very well and the guarantee is over, obviously they have to have the right to kick the operator out, because probably or is not the right operator, or just enter the contract because the sake of entering a pure management agreement without any risk. So it's difficult to say what is the right management agreement, but at the same time, beside the alignment of interest, we have to talk about the type of asset, how strategic is the asset, the type of brand. Obviously, if NH is using his, let's say, lowest brand, is different than in having NH using its top brand. Obviously, we are more sensible to not be kicked out with our top brand because it's bad advertising. Obviously, we have built some value. We have invested quite a lot of money in marketing, in creating a brand and a location, an attraction point for that hotel. Then the type of management agreement obviously makes, again, the difference. A plain vanilla management agreement, which in my opinion doesn't exist anymore, obviously is totally different than a kind of agreement that Carl was talking about, where the operator is taking over the responsibility of the employees, where the operator is giving guarantees, where the operator is actually putting some key money, or where the operator has other responsibilities that are not in a plain vanilla management agreement. And then, obviously, management agreement has to be also fair, in the sense that, obviously, if you are taking a hotel, we want to earn some money. And the fees that Keith was talking about, obviously, we have to recover our cost. And at the same time, if you are doing a good job, we want also to make some money. So we had to be fair since the beginning in terms of what are the fees and what is actually the sharing of the value that we are putting together in this hotel.
Frank, what are you seeing that's not working well if we look at it conversely? We've talked about what investors may need and what the operator striking the balance. From your experience, what isn't working and why?
Well, as I said before, for us, it's key to have fixed income, and that's not common in all markets. For example, in Germany, we see a lot of leases. It's a market for leases. The same in Spain. In Spain, we also see leases, and that's why we like NH so much and work nicely together, because NH is a party which is able and willing to enter into long-term leases, and I think it works for both if the lease agreement is right, and if you share basically the cash flow between owner and operator in a way which works on a long-term sustainable basis. So for an operator, I think it's difficult to enter into a very long-term lease agreement with a high rent and a difficult to achieve rent. So we are getting also more flexible now to enter into leases with a turnover component or a GOP share that we get a part of the income. In our case, it has to be the majority of the income has to be fixed for us, and there can be a top up which is turnover based or GOP share, and that's a way really where you can maneuver also through more difficult ground. Right now, it's for the hotel industry. We really had good years. Maybe it gets worse again, and in that case, there's also some protection for the operator to not to enter into a too high lease agreement. So that's really a way we work together with the operators, as we cannot do management agreements. And in the past, we have seen that also lease agreements have been agreed on a level which was too high, and operators on a long-term basis have went into difficulties. But that's really a way that works for us good.
Keith, do you have anything which is a particular gripe from your side?
No, no particular gripe. I think I agree. I mean, it really is a partnership that you're entering into. So trust is key. Both parties need to bring something to the table. There needs to be an alignment. I think, obviously, that my reference to the vacant possession exit scenario is a topic where a lot of operators have difficulty with. And the other side is obviously, it's clear why owners want that flexibility. The performance component is important. So I can totally understand the logic of making the case that if I'm performing well, I shall be able to maintain my position as operator in a property, and just within a certain range that makes a lot of sense. There's an exception to that. One of the exceptions is, as an owner, the operator is generating value to the extent that they're performing well. But then in a scenario where that then leaves them in an incumbent position, that does exclude certain buyers from the pool. So by default, you are trimming down the size of your buyer pool from strategic buyers, et cetera, which in some cases pay a premium. So the cost to the owner is that you are carving out a number of potential buyers from that asset. In terms of the performance itself, I mean, performance tests are something that are negotiated in every contract, and it's really getting performance tests that work, that are enforceable, that are sensible, that truly reflect the relative position, not only within the comp set or within certain pre-agreed business plan levels in terms of EBITDA, et cetera. I don't love the performance test that is associated with comp set performance. Operators prefer that in many cases. I tend to prefer hard EBITDA numbers in a business plan, with some flexibility and some catch-up, et cetera. But the performance clauses themselves are important, and it's something that's negotiated. In many cases, you can see performance clauses in a management contract, and I'm sure you've seen them. And once you review them and you consider what the text actually means, you can see that the performance clause might as well be thrown in the bin. In which case, it doesn't add any value to the owner.
It's a performance clause, which is headed performance clause, but means nothing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Bruno.
Yeah, we sometimes also saw in those performance tests that the hotel you're comparing your asset, or if you have a 4-star, sometimes you have a 3-star in this competitive set. So basically, it would be hard to, in some case to see your hotel going that low in terms of performance. Completely agree with you on that. It's a lot of time to negotiate with hotel operators, and in the end, it's a tool which is hard to use during the contract.
Yeah.
At this point, does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask? Feel free, don't be shy.
What would distinguish a good operator from a less good one? Would that be EBITDA? Would that be GOP? What's the number you would be looking at first?
That will depend. This is the answer. It will depend of your asset. For instance, if you have a 4-star hotel, looking at a first-star hotel operator will be definitely a mistake. And sorry for that, Claudio, but hotel operator, when it comes to selection, they can show you a management agreement draft. They will present you a BP, but they will only sign for the management agreement. So you have to really test them on their capability to reach the BP they are presenting to you. Does this 85 occupancy rate at 1,000 euro ADR, are you able to generate it? Does your brand has sufficient awareness in the market and in the market where your premises are located to generate that? And that is maybe the first stress test we're making with them when we're exchanging is, does this brand fit to your hotel? There is no straight answer, unfortunately. Honestly, I'll be unemployed.
I'll give you a couple other little concepts, at least in which we consider. Obviously, you look at the asset, you look at the market, you see that particular network of the operator. How many properties do they have in the market? Is there any cannibalization in terms of distribution, etc.? So that's one component, considering the relevant areas of protection within their other contracts and where you're getting your outsized share, ideally, piece of the distribution. It is important, depending on which market you are, whether it's urban, resort, or a certain jurisdiction, city, etc., thinking about what the source markets are. So there's the domestic market, the international market. From an international demand perspective, what are the most important source markets, and which operator or distribution system has a strong penetration into those markets? So again, so that you can maybe get your outsized share within that market itself. The brand, the fit, the story, the renovation program, how that fits together with the partner and the brand. By the way, in many cases, I know we're talking about management contracts, but there's clearly a trend of a split between the management company and the brands, the franchise. I don't think we're talking about that today. The other side, in terms of management contracts, setting aside the brand component, is probably, really looking at the benchmarks of what what are their trading comparables that they have now? Have they demonstrated an ability to perform well within those markets? Is there a let's say centralized operational unit in that market where you can have cost clustering, et cetera, in areas where immediately you buy one asset, you bring it into a certain operating network, and you can reduce the overhead by, from A to B. So it's great if you can identify those opportunities right off the bat. And obviously there's a number of other things, but those are some characteristics other than obviously the terms of the contract that you'd be negotiated. Key money doesn't hurt either.
If you can get the guarantee, take it.
The guarantee.
It depends how long does it last.
Don't ask Bruno, he's against it. But
There's other way to value your asset than the guarantee.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
So at the end, we've seen that they are looking for guarantees, they are looking at EBITDA, they are looking at all these kind of things. They want to kick out the operator.
No, we don't want. I never use the word kick out. I don't know who started that, so don't quote me on kick out. I love our operating partners.
They want performance test, obviously, and performance test is they don't want to see ADR, they don't want to see occupancy, and if they just want to see EBITDA or GOP, and you have to guarantee the EBITDA or GOP. What if there is a market turnaround and there is another crisis, and the market is collapsing, and all your competitors are collapsing, but you promise an EBITDA, and they are telling you, this is the EBITDA you promise, I'm sorry, I don't care about the performance test, and I don't care about your colleagues that they are doing very badly, you promise and you have to pay. So, this is not total alignment of interest.
But wait, I think you're defending your position very well.
He's in the room.
I think what you're doing, though, is you're taking the bad parts of a lease and the bad parts of a management contract, and you're putting them together. So.
you want me to sit over there, Claudio, or can you switch seats?
Yes. No. So I think if we are honest with ourselves, there has been an evolution in management contracts, and we can point to how and why, but partly driven by market forces and the relatively difficult times that we have all seen. What other models are you now seeing, and and are there jurisdictional differences that would make you consider something else, or you would prefer in place of a management contract?
Should I kick it off? Or?
Yes.
Well, obviously, you know, I think what is the other option, which we have since the acquisition in the US experienced. I mean, we've known this option before, where you have a franchise, you have the label, you franchise agreement, and you have I think the term is third-party operator in place, which we experience at the Hilton in LA, Pasadena. I think this is something probably less on the European continent, but I think a lot stronger in the UK. We have certain key operators there which take on this. This is also one way of maybe for us to consider I mentioned again the term of the employees and some other components to use that. But of course there is a cost to it which needs to be factored in. But clearly a way around, and we could talk about this for hours in terms of can they do a better job operationally? Are they pushing the brand or the franchise brand in this case harder sometimes to do? Which raises, of course, the next question, you know, why are they better and why are the brand themselves not doing all this? This may be a topic for another, you know, session. But clearly, this is for us a route we are considering, we are looking at, and depending on the opportunity, you know, this comes into play. So maybe that's one point from my side.
Well, what we saw is that, as I said earlier, you're seeing a new type of investor coming to a hotel, as it is becoming mainstream and a real and proper asset class after office, logistic, and retail. And definitely, those type of investors usually have a problem with having their staff on their book. And as we move along, you can see that hotel operators are not any more keen to sign any leases, but for NH. But that definitely limits the number of operators you could have in your hotel, and a way to do it, and that's been on the rise, is third-party operators. You just mentioned it, KISS. That is one of a way where you can have the staff which will be beared on this third operator company, and basically will limit the risk, as for instance, if you're a European fund, I mean yours is the case, but we do also have in France a REIT which cannot support staff on their book, and the solution will be going to go through third-party operator. That has been on the rise, mostly in UK, because everything coming from the US, it started first in UK. I believe that there is definitely a way for continental Europe, definitely in countries where the employment environment is, let's say, unfriendly to investors. I can mention France, for instance, where I mean it's definitely hard when you have to handle those issues. And third-party operators are definitely offering a new way to further develop in a hotel for those investors which are brand new, which will be looking at management agreement as very complex things compared to lease where they're used to, and also they will be secure by the fact that the third-party operator has a common alignment in terms of interest with them. Usually a hotel group has a loyalty to the brand, while a third-party operator has a loyalty to the owner, and they mostly get their fee not from the top line, but from the bottom line. And those 2 points are really key for investors. They really have people they can work with, while with hotel operators, sometimes they do not know if their hotel is the best of and the one that this hotel operator is really looking after, or is he already looking after another development in the same city?
Frank?
Yeah, what we have done now in a couple of cases, so we actually do own 2 hotels which are operated under management agreements, but it's the same for us that we can't employ people. So So we wouldn't be able to take over the opco. Someone else has to do it. And so we can't employ staff in our funds. And secondly, we would be also applicable to trade tax, which would be a fatal situation in our fund. So therefore, we need a third party to operate it, and we've done that now in, for example, we bought in Warsaw the Interconti Hotel, which is operated under management agreement, and the Marriott East Side in New York, we bought that with a partner together. And in both cases, the partner has actually taken over the operational company and is running that under management agreement and gives us a fixed income. So it's kind of something between a lease and a management agreement. So it's a complicated construction and it's not ideal. But in some markets we are just not able to get the lease agreements in place, and therefore we start these constructions to make it run for us. But of course we would rather like to have a company, for example, like NH, to run it under lease agreement, which would be also a lot easier to exit again. You know, to exit out of these kind of situations is also not so easy. So what Keith is doing, you know, the vacant possession thing is probably the best you can have. You're flexible.
Yeah.
And the next buyer can do what he wants. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a good innovation.
But we hold the assets really long. So we have a different holding period than you have. We don't have to exit, or we don't want to exit within 5 or 7 years. So we typically hold the assets a lot longer.
Yeah. I think the innovation, the combination between the operator and the owner in certain jurisdictions. So it's the operator seeing that there's a certain risk that some of their potential clients need to be addressed. So labor in some jurisdictions, or for the purpose of some investors' profile, and different considerations within their investment strategy, or fiscal restrictions. So I think it's a good innovation, and it's something that the operators are. It's not so relevant for us, but it's relevant for a lot of other players, and I think it's important. It could be a competitive advantage for some operators, because if they can offer that service, it's a housing of employees service, basically, which mitigates certain risks for the owner. I think can be, on one hand, very useful for some investors, can be a competitive advantage for operators that are willing to offer that service in addition to other things. Some jurisdictions, France, Italy, there's a couple others that are challenging for a number of people, and one of the biggest challenges for an investor going into that market is understanding and underwriting that labor risk. So if someone else can take that off their hand, that allows them to kind of deploy capital into that market and hence grow the business of the operating partner as well.
Sorry, Keith. What we have seen, we're currently working through a project where we're doing a small tender process, and we've seen some of the operators, they now in certain countries have a partner, and that partner works for them, and the operator offers the franchise, and then the partner offers the management or the lease contract, and that's what we see, maybe others as well. Another route, which tied in what you were just saying now, the brand operators are finding in teaming up with a local, platform in order to offer these sort of services.
Absolutely. I don't know, NH, if you're getting involved in the franchise business, but clearly some of your competitors are moving in that direction. And from an investor perspective, we certainly like the franchise model. We see the benefits of splitting between management and distribution and brand. And in some cases, they're better bundled. So it's case by case. And I've even seen some people talking about manchises, and I'm not going to even try to define what that is. It's a hybrid of some kind. Other things that we're starting to see a little bit more these days is operators have a lot more money on their balance sheets. So they're looking at how to deploy that capital other than, paying out dividends or buying back their shares. So they are more and more interested in making some money in real estate. So we are seeing some more co-investment or minority stakes being offered by our operating partners in the big companies. And in return for that, there's a way of de-risking some of their cash flows. Maybe you agree a promote structure on exit, which is by the way, not the most standard approach to some of the larger operating companies, but I'm seeing people now more and more open to looking at a back-ended promote type of incentive on exit. Then helps align, the flexibility on exit as well. So there's, and then once you have a shared capital position in the investment, then you can have a discussion around, let's say the waterfall of cash in terms of preferred returns, etc. So there's ways of addressing that as well.
Actually, every year we share with Frank his bonus because I keep saying that NH is signing his leases, so he saves his work and we are sharing the bonus.
Thank you.
Between lease contracts and management agreements, actually there is a universe of different contracts. As Keith mentioned, there is franchise, there are every kind of hybrid leases, every kind of hybrid management agreements. So it's a real universe. NH is true that in some cases, depending on the location, we sign fixed leases. We can do that. In some cases, it's an exception, but we tend not to do that because IFRS change, and with the new accounting rules, we are bringing debt into our balance sheet, which is something that we don't like. So it's something that probably we will have to revise with Frank in the near future. And then there are a lot of hybrid leases where there is a turnaround lease with minimum component. In some cases, we put cap on shortfall, which is in a sense very similar to a hybrid management agreement. There are some guarantees, there are no guarantees, corporate guarantees, bank guarantees. And the management agreement, obviously, it's pretty much the same because as soon as we move from this end to the other end, obviously, this end is a pure obligation, and the other hand is, I would like to make this hotel a success, but I'm not promising it. So in between, there are so many things that we can do, and what we do normally in the market, we try to find the best possible agreement with the best possible partner. And depending on the partner, we try to adapt our contract and also depending on the deal. So we are very flexible in the sense also because every deal is different, every partner is different. If you are doing something with DECA, obviously we know that it's not a management agreement. It's going to be a lease, can be an hybrid lease. They are open now. But if we are dealing with the KIF, actually here there is the broad spectrum of everything with AXA in the middle. So it really depends on the asset, how strategic, and also the partner that you have in front of you.
Absolutely.
Any questions to the panel?
Yeah, I have a question. One thing that you haven't discussed about is the pre-opening expenses that are normally associated with the management contract. And I'm pretty sure what Claudio's opinion is about it, but I would like to know about you guys. What is your position on the pre-opening expenses?
Pre-opening expenses?
Mm-hmm.
On a transition from, or I mean, I guess there's two scenarios where it's applicable, right? When you build a new hotel and you're ramping up the operations to an opening date, and on the other hand, let's say a transition or marketing type of expenditure when you're actually just rebranding the existing operation or asset from one operator or brand to another operator or brand. I mean, my only comment is that the pre-opening expenses is something that is always applicable. I guess the only debate is who pays for it, I guess. I think, from an ownership perspective and taking into consideration that we're bringing in the best management or a brand to help us create value in the real estate, those costs are our costs as an owner. So we can agree on that, right? So
then you will ask for Kimani.
Yeah. He always sees what's coming. But yeah, I see that as an owner expense just from my perspective. Now, if you have a lease arrangement, then you can negotiate it in any depending on, you can put it in either bucket, to be honest. But
yeah, I think like he said, you have to agree on the opening expenses, which, well, forms part of the discussion. I think you also need then to discuss what other
common technical fees tend to apply, and what else applies, which the brand requires or needs to provide the right support. I think the best is this is agreed in advance, and any working capital sums and so on. And if that is being sorted out, then I think hopefully there should be no surprises. But of course, it depends how lavish your opening event will be. If you want to have the Rolling Stones for the opening night, it could be a bit more expensive, and so on. So I think that's key, and you have to sort all this out in advance. It helps to have the right direction.
It's part of a budgeting process, so you should have not only sight on it, but the ability to have discussed and negotiated an appropriate number as well.
Yeah, there are some companies, the car probably knows something about that, that actually they fix a fixed amount for the pre-opening expenses, and if you overcome that amount, you put the money from your pockets. So that is another bright experience we had. So it's evolving. There is everything. We negotiate right now. We negotiate almost on everything. Also on pre-opening expenses, the amount and how much is going to be paid in advance. All these kind of things. So it's becoming a very, very entertaining environment right now.
And the timing and ramp up of the actual payments, right? When do you hire the staff? How far in advance? How do you scale that up? When is the marketing, initiatives launched, and within what range of expense lines as well? So,
of course, it gets a little difficult if your projected delivery of the hotel is delayed, and then discussions become a bit more interesting. Which may be another topic for another session, So
that's true.
So all things being equal,
or the exit clause.
there you are.
So striking a better balance between...
I think there's a question.
Oh, sorry.
How does, with third-party operating structures now, maybe operating multiple franchises or multiple brands, how do brands or even owners protect their intellectual property that they bring in, and where do operators sign saying that they don't move that property around?
I'll let you take that one.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we are not doing this kind of triangle. It's pretty usual, especially with DECA is, I guess, a very good experience in that, because normally, as Frank was mentioning before, they are looking for a fixed income that is coming, and they are looking also for great brands. So there are great brands that are not willing to pay any lease. So what they find is someone else in between that is, as you mentioned before, is the one that is paying the fixed stream of income, and they sign a franchising agreement with a franchising company. In this case, I guess there is a real franchising agreement between the operator, the real operator of the hotel, and the franchising company, and in the franchising company is already covered the copyright and everything regarding what they are putting into the hotel. The operator depends, again, how strong is the operator, because the operator is, a company that has a couple of hotels, and they are very interested, very keen to do that deal with DECA or whatever other fund. Obviously, they might be strangled a bit regarding the conditions and what is their flexibility in terms of intellectual capital or whatever they are bringing into the property. So it depends on the negotiation power that they have.
But I think it's an interesting question, because you have a growing environment of franchisees which operate hotels under certain brands, and it also comes to a point now where you have, in one city, you have one franchisee who operates 3 different hotels. So it gets interesting when you have agreed over the fixed income, a GOP share or a turnover-based rent, and then of course you have to watch out what he's doing. So it's a
cost allocation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's an interesting question, which hasn't been so important for now, because you don't have, like in US where you have franchisees who run, a big number of hotels. I think this is a market which is still growing and will be more important, especially in Germany. But we need, from our perspective, we need certain tools to protect us from that. That's a good question.
Maybe another point to consider is if you are looking at opportunity in that particular city and you are planning to team up with a third-party operator, I think it's good to avoid that they do not run, like you said, the same similar brand or similar category of hotels. We at the moment are looking at something and they are running something in that city, but it's of a higher level. So I think there's a benefit because they already have insight into the marketplace and can be obviously the bonus point. But there are a few components really to bear in mind.
I'm conscious we're running out of time, but just before we close, thinking through the rebalancing, the investor profile, the need for Keith's part, a nimble exit. How, briefly, what do you see as the trends that are going to evolve in management contracts or contractual arrangements going forward in the next 12 to 24 months? Briefly.
Well, as I was saying, it's a very tough environment. Plain vanilla management contract doesn't exist anymore, and we are negotiating on everything. We have to be flexible. At the same time, there is a lot of money in the market, so also big funds are becoming a little more flexible. This kind of flexibility, obviously, is, in my opinion, is opening up new kind of negotiation within the same range of hybrid management agreements. So I guess management agreements will be more and more accepted, also because IFRS changed, so that the leases are less and less considered by operating company. But at the same time, within the management agreements, as Frank was saying, if the operator is taking over, the risk of the employees is given an NOI guaranteed or something similar to that. Obviously, it's not anymore a real management agreement. It's more a lease contract rather than a management agreement, because you take out most of the risk. So I see that from the lease, we are moving towards the management agreements, like it happened actually in the United States. Actually, all the operators are taking over the risk of the employees. In many cases, are giving guarantees, performance tests, all these kind of things. So I see that the streaming is moving towards the management agreements, but with a lot more negotiation between the parties, because everybody's interested to do deals.
Yeah, I agree. See, we got there. No, for sure. I mean, it's no, didn't say that. So no, I think I agree. It's a balance. It's really the kind of sharing of risk and reflecting that risk in terms of upside and downside, and who proportionally benefits from the two sides of the story. The more risk the operator is taking, the more right they have to upside in the value they create, and the other way around. If they're taking little to no risk, then the balance moves a bit in the other direction. But for sure, I mean, it is a transition. I think more and more the contracts are, as you say, reflecting the nature of the business of running a hotel, which is an operational, employee-heavy business. Which is different than a logistics box, for example. It is a very different sector and investment profile. So, and the IFRS components are definitely going to have an impact on the lease market as a whole, and certain innovations will come out of that. So, but there will still be certain fiscal restrictions. So it's kind of balancing those three things. So it'll be interesting. We'll find a way.
Yeah, I think the trend will continue. What we have seen over the last years is that the large brands, they are not willing anymore to sign lease contracts because of the IFRS rules, and it will be even more restrictive in the future. So on one hand, you will, I think, see more movement to the management agreement, but at the same time, there will be a growing mass of franchisees, which will basically get into that gap and fill it. You know, the IFRS rules, obviously, they're only applicable to stock-listed companies. So the smaller franchisees, which run 20, 30 hotels, maybe they are not really they don't care, and they don't have to use the IFRS rules. So they just do what they want. They can still sign leases. So there will be a big environment for franchise agreements, I think.
Oh, great point. I mean, if the parties like yourselves, with the cost of capital that you have, in reflecting this shift in the dynamics between the players, when these franchisee groups, that many of which today aren't as far evolved as some other markets in around the globe, have 3-6 properties under management in a reasonably small balance sheet. You know, obviously, in order, because covenant's important for you, you know, to sit behind the guarantee, etc. So as they get stronger, their balance sheets get stronger. They're going to be able to start tapping into groups like DECA and others that are looking for that lease partner. So they'll build up their covenant strength, their balance sheet. Gives you a better partner, it gives you a better partner, it lets the market evolve, and we move on. So I think it's a very good point. Yeah.
I think the colleagues covered the main points. Maybe something just to underline, I do feel there probably needs to be a closer look at the fee structure going forward. We can see some parties tend to be focusing maybe a slightly lower base fee, and of course, without talking about these other fees, and there may be a higher incentive, but each case needs to be assessed individually. I think that could be something. I always feel an interesting topic is the area of protection to discuss. You know, if you are in a certain location and so on, which is never straightforward. I think Keith covered a bit earlier on the topic of performance test. I think also there has to be maybe a certain approach. Apart from one occasion in my 20 plus years, I don't remember in Europe it really has happened, you know, and so on, and why it is so important. I think if you start a partnership and you know, for some reason it doesn't work out, and it can happen, there must be an uncomplicated way to say, well, maybe you know, we need to regroup or find someone else. And some operators, you know, adopt this differently to others, and so maybe a couple of points in addition to everything else has been said. And of course, one point could also be, which has been touched on, is the length of the contract.
Thank you. Bruno, to close.
Yeah, to close, well, I'll add that you're talking about where the management agreements are going. Well, you have also to compare where the leases are going. And what we're seeing now is that hotel operators that are ready to sign leases offer usually a cap corporate guarantee, which I call a hidden management agreement. So thanks to that, that is giving more strength to management agreement, as you can negotiate more on that field. And as all those gentlemen said earlier, I believe that average term, the fee structure and the exit value are the one where the operator are becoming more flexible than they used to be 10 years ago, for instance.
Maybe just one point, I think I read, and I think this is fact, if you look at last year in France, all the transactions, and I believe 86% of the transactions were management agreements, and obviously the remaining lease, or I don't think any franchise. So that's quite an interesting change where you instinctively would say, and you know, it's better that it's a very surprising number of high management transactions. So,
well, in those transactions last year in France, in some case you had PropCo and OpCo which were existing, but you had a common sale. So it's sometimes hard to
you need to go into the details.
Yeah.
I would like to thank each of you for your participation this afternoon, and I would ask the audience to thank the panel speakers.